Good afternoon. How are we all doing this afternoon? So, I've been asked my opinion on the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank failures. Both have since been bailed out by the government. Has bailed them out, which means all the money they fucked up, all the billions of dollars they lost to people's, they're giving right back. Like, oh, it's okay. Here you go. From big government. Because big government wants us to put our money into these big banks. They're telling us that our money is not safe in mom and pop banks, but if we put it in their bank, it's trusted and it's appropriate, and it's whole. It's not whole when it's in a mom and pop, but it is with them. This is straight communism, people. This is straight. Okay, what I think is going on is this is the in the name of the digital era of currency and your carbon footprint. You ever hear your carbon footprint? So I'm gonna play a couple clips here. I'm gonna play a clip of a senator asking about mom and pop banks, and the spokesperson for the government saying, Miss Yellen, saying how your money's safe if you go put your money in a government bank, and it's not safe in mom and pop banks. I'll play that clip. Then I'm going to play the clip of your digital footprint. And as you can see on the thumbnail, I've shared multiple news article headings that talk about the digital currency, climate change, your carbon footprint, and your carbon emission. Let me play these clips, and I'll come back and talk about carbon footprint and what I think. But I think that's what's happening here. They just had a world meeting over in Sweden or something like that, with major players in the banks, whatnot, what have you, and it was all basically against climate change. So they're saying they can track your carbon emissions through consumption, what you buy, etc., etc. Let me play these clips and I'll come back on.
Federal Reserve might want to fix your wallet by turning it from this into this. Though your wallet is still designed for dollar bills, Americans have been using cash to buy things less and less over the years. That's part of why the Fed is considering digitizing the US dollar, giving people money they can access on their phone and bypassing electronic payments that can be slow and costly for businesses. Some see this as a necessary upgrade to the US financial system, but others worry it could potentially upend commercial banking.
There are some very, very difficult questions to answer, but I think we are engaged in a serious program to understand both the technology and the policy issues.
A central bank digital currency, or CBDC, is exactly what it sounds like. A purely digital form of a country's money issued by its central bank that people can use just like cash. It's true that cards and apps already allow for electronic payment, but behind the scenes, these financial transactions involve several steps, settling payments over a patchwork of systems.
The plumbing of the system is still based on a cash system.
Josh Lipsky is the director of the Atlantic Council's Geoeconomic Center and says the US financial system is still pretty old school when it comes to moving money around. After a debit card is swiped, the transaction can flow through several entities, including point-of-sale systems, payment networks like Visa and MasterCard, your bank, and merchant's bank. The system can take up to 3 days to move money between accounts, and often comes with transaction fees that can weigh heavily on small businesses, who experts say may have to pass the cost onto customers or put restrictions on card usage. These extra costs can limit their revenues and customer base. CBDCs could bypass the system, allowing digital money to flow directly between two people, in the same way you hand over cash at the register. One method the Fed is considering is issuing digital wallets to Americans directly, or through commercial banks or other financial service providers. The digital dollars themselves would be no more than computer code, possibly stored on a central ledger at the Fed or on a distributed ledger like many cryptocurrencies. When you use your wallet to pay for something, the Fed would take the digital cash out of your wallet and deposit it into the merchants, simplifying the process and doing it without fees. These could be done through an app on a phone, or for those without smartphones, an SMS text message or debit card. Besides frictionless payments, a digital dollar could help the 8.4 million unbanked households who don't have a debit or credit card and can get left behind in a cashless world. For example, instead of mailing checks, the government could deposit your tax refund or stimulus payments directly into your Fed wallet, making the money available immediately. Proponents also say CBDCs offer a much more effective tool for central banks to enact monetary policy. Right now, the Fed influences interest rates across the entire economy by setting borrowing rates between banks, known as the federal funds rate. But this is often a fraught process that doesn't always produce the desired results.
The Fed sets this benchmark rate and other private banks are supposed to queue off it, and then your mortgage is supposed to queue off it. Does that really work? How much time does it take? And the answer that economists will tell you is it works, but there are probably more efficient ways to transfer monetary policy.
Economists believe that if the Federal Reserve were to assign interest rates to the money stored in digital wallets, it would be much more effective at influencing economic decision-making at the household level. According to a January survey, 60% of central banks around the world are currently experimenting with CBDCs. The Bahamas was the first country to release a digital currency, called the Sand Dollar, in October 2020. And China has been developing and testing a digital version of the yuan. But there are questions about how a digital currency would work in the US.
Legitimate digital public money could help drive out bogus digital private money. It could help improve financial inclusion, efficiency, and the safety of our financial system if that digital public money is well designed and efficiently executed, which are two very big ifs.
The recent rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and private currencies like Facebook's Diem have spurred central banks to explore CBDCs in an effort to keep pace. Experts say these alternative currencies expose the risk of money and payments circulating outside the watchful eyes of central banks.
This is a blind spot for them because when they're setting monetary policy, they like to know how much money is in circulation, broadly how that money is being used. And so that helps them understand the macroeconomics and the fundamentals of the economy at any given time.
But by keeping up with new competitors, CBDCs could threaten to leave traditional banking behind.
So if the Fed were to become a bank in a traditional sense and actually issue people money and hold people's money directly, then you might hold less money in your Bank of America app, and that would cut into their business model. So they have to think about how digital currencies affect their business.
Because of these issues, the Federal Reserve is still studying the scope and structure of how a digital dollar would work and how it could be integrated into the current banking system.
The Fed doesn't want to start dealing with 300 million customers overnight. They're not equipped to do that. So you don't want to call up the Fed at midnight and say, I forgot my password. This is not something the Fed wants to be doing or can do. So they need to think about who to work with to deliver digital dollars.
The Fed would also have to tackle privacy concerns over how anonymous digital dollar payments should be, and whether the money should be restricted to specific transactions or programmed to expire after a certain time period to encourage spending. It plans to release a discussion paper on the benefits and risks of a digital dollar this summer, and has said it wouldn't move forward without support from Congress. Many experts say the Fed will need to figure out a digital dollar to keep up with the pace of a rapidly changing global economy. What that looks like remains to be seen, but it could mean using this a lot less.
At this Shanghai shopping mall, Lu Heng is testing out China's new digital currency. It's safe, convenient, and it works, he says. Paying with digital yuan feels similar to WeChat or Apple Pay. You use your mobile phone. Less tech-savvy people can get a credit card-like card, but the digital yuan isn't a payment system. It's actual money. The digital yuan is issued by the central bank, just like paper notes. It resembles cryptocurrency in that it's computer code and is stored in a digital wallet, but unlike crypto, eCNY is tied to the Chinese government, fixed to the physical yuan at a rate of 1-to-1. Physical yuan is hard to track. The digital yuan is meant to allow the government to keep an eye on money flows. It can also be programmed, for example, to expire to encourage people to spend. Those controls don't worry Lu, who thinks the digital yuan offers greater privacy than China's payment platforms. That means the new currency could pose a threat to companies like Tencent and Ant Group. My personal information and purchasing data is already in the hands of big tech, he says. Shops that use WeChat and Alipay need to pay processing fees. The digital yuan is free.
And at the mall that Lou and I visited, you could pretty much buy everything there with digital yuan. If you want to get an entire outfit with from the Burberry store, you could do it with digital yuan. But I think the true test is going to be when and how Beijing allows international transfers, because that could be potentially destabilizing. Guys? That's one potential goal of the Chinese government.
Huh. Right, and Eunice, international transfers is sort of besides the point, right? Because Bitcoin has really emerged as an asset class, not something to be used to pay for things yet. The digital yuan, though, it's interesting because its primary purpose is to pay for things. So in that sense, how could this be a threat to the US dollar? Isn't it just sort of a way for the Chinese central bank to more keep tabs on its population?
That's one potential goal of the Chinese government. But another goal that people talk about here is that the Chinese government might want to really digitize the entire economy, have the entire economy run on digital yuan as opposed to the physical yuan. But in terms of the digital yuan really being a risk to the U.S. dollar dominance, it's not really seen that way here, mainly because the digital yuan is more of a mirror of the physical yuan. It's like a surrogate. So it still comes under, is expected to come under, the same controls that the physical RMB is under. So no, free trading or anything like that. And that way, that could really make it difficult for the renminbi or the digital renminbi to challenge the U.S. dollar dominance. That said, there is something that you can do with the digital yuan that was kind of interesting, because I can actually transfer digital yuan to someone else with or without an internet connection directly if I wanted to. And that's if both people have a digital wallet. And that's something that is kind of being talked about here as a bit of an end around for U.S. sanctions, in case, for example, you're a Chinese official who might have some issues and not want to have the U.S. government see all these transactions that run through the traditional, SWIFT and financial system. So that is potentially something that could happen, but a lot of big questions right now about the digital yuan.
Eunice, I find myself with this, as with many things when it comes to China's system, when it comes to tracking, horrified and fascinated at the same time. This seems to be the opposite of what's happening with crypto over here. This is a super centralized currency for people who trust the government but don't trust companies. Also, this idea of an expiring currency. I wonder what would happen if the U.S. were to put out stimulus with an expiring currency that made it hard for people to save it. Would people trade it for less money that they could save? Would it really stimulate the economy? So many questions.
So many questions, and something that actually is being discussed worldwide. I mean, China isn't the only one that's talking about having a digital currency, and there are a lot of people here who follow the digital currencies and said that this is something that other countries should be doing. And, privately they say that probably other countries would want to do that so they could have full visibility on transactions of their citizens and of criminals. So there could be potentially, some good uses for this. But at the same time, China, because it has such controls here over the financial system, might be in a much better place to be able to roll this type of system out.
Did you know you can receive free cell phone service? That's
What's up, guys? So, what do you think about that? It just seems like to me, again, it's a way to track you. It's what America is doing with the supposed carbon footprint. Here, let me play this. Discover whoever's credit card company this is. Here, let me show this clip. and then I'll have a final discussion. What do you guys think of this? But this is my opinion of what's happening with the bank collapses and them forcing you to put your money where they want it to go. Oh, speaking of forcing you, I'll show that.
Commercial promote it.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
In 2018, the United Nations released an urgent report emphasizing the need to cut carbon emissions in half by 2030 in order to avoid an irreversible climate crisis. The average consumer in Sweden causes around 10 tons of carbon emissions each year, of which 60% is linked to consumption. Later in 2018, Doconomy, a Swedish fintech, took on the challenge and launched Do, a mobile banking service for everyday climate action. The Do app is connected to a credit card that enables users to track and measure their carbon footprint from each purchase and to compensate for its impact day by day. This spring, Doconomy took its fight against climate change one step further by adding a premium credit card to its offer. But instead of introducing a premium credit card with the typical benefits that encourages further mass consumption, Doconomy did the opposite by launching Do Black, the world's first credit card with a carbon limit. Simply put, it's the first credit card ever to stop you from overspending. Not based on your available funds, but rather on the levels of CO2 emissions caused by your consumption. Do Black helps you track your climate impact and ensures that you reduce it by 50% in line with the UN 2030 recommendation.
The core purpose of Do Black is not only the ability to measure the impact of your consumption, but also bringing it to a direct halt, making it a radical tool against climate change.